Hey everyone, it's Leanne here. Welcome to another video on my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to show you how to create the Jump for Joy birthday card, and this is using the brand new fall themed stamp set from Lawn Fawn, and it is also called Jump for Joy. So I'm creating a birthday card for my mom, and I'm going to use the little hedgehog, the leaf pile, a couple of the individual leaf stamps, and the sentiment Jump for Joy, it's your birthday. So to begin, I'm going to stamp out the stamps that I want to color on some Nina Solar White cardstock, and this is 80 pound. And I'm stamping this with Memento Tuxedo Black ink. I will be coloring these in with COPIC markers, which are an alcohol-based marker, and this ink pad is safe to use with that medium. So I stamped out a few hedgehogs. I like to do a couple just in case along the way I change my mind on the coloring or stuff like that, but I also didn't get a clean impression on the first couple stamps, so I put a few more down. And then I'm stamping out the leaves here as well. So just getting that all in place, and then they will be ready to color. So I'm going to color my hedgehog first, and I've sped up the video so you guys can see all the coloring and the shading that I do. For the hedgehog, I decided to use a lighter skin tone for his skin, his front, and I'm using the skin tone set from COPIC. And this is really good because it pairs all the colors together, and it goes in a gradiated scale. So you can just move down one marker color depending on how dark you want a skin tone or how light you want a skin tone. And because his little prickles or his little spiny things sticking out the back are going to be a darker brown, I wanted to do a contrast with his front by doing a lighter color. So I'm just getting him all colored up, and of course putting on some cheeks because he's a critter and the cheek colors are always really cute to add. So for his little prickle things, and I actually don't know what they're called, but maybe someone does. If someone knows what the little spiny things are called, maybe you can put that in the comments below. I'm not quite sure, but just to do those, I'm doing little short wispy strokes so that I can fill that in that area so that you can get the idea that he has all the little prickle things all over his back. And I've just built up the color, so I'm using a darker brown as I go. And it's sort of like doing hair as well on an image. So for the leaves, I didn't want to go with a typical fall color. It's fall here, and this is a fall stamp set, but it doesn't really feel like fall yet. We still have a lot of warm weather right now, and even living in Canada, it's kind of surprising. But I wanted to do something fun and colorful instead for my mom's card. And I know her favorite color is purple, so I decided to choose 3 colors for my leaves and do some pretty colors. So I'm doing some leaves in purple, and I will do some in teal and some in blue. So for coloring the leaves, instead of trying to create all of the shadows for each of the leaves as they fall around each other, I found it easier just to do an ombre effect. So that's starting with a lighter color at the top and a darker color at the bottom, and just blending those two together. And the leaves are kind of small, so I found that I didn't actually need to put a lot of detail into the lights and darks and the shades and the highlights. And then once I was done in the leaf pile, I colored some of the individual leaves in that color as well. Now when you're doing coloring or any kind of design work, visual art, you want to make sure that you have odd numbers. And so I've used 3 different colors, so those are my odd numbers. I have an odd number of colors. And then for the placement of the colors of the leaves in the pile, I've tried to scatter those around and balance them equally, trying not to have the same color touching each other as much as possible. I mean, it is inevitable. You see it there with the purple ones on the right, but for the most part, I try to get an equal balance of color for all of those. So I'm coming in with the blue, and I thought the blue was really pretty. I thought that these colors were a nice mix together and sort of something atypical that you wouldn't really see as a fall color, but they were still really fun to look at, and I thought it would brighten up the birthday card and make it a little interesting and unique, not a typical fall scene. A fun fact is that I actually used to have a hedgehog as a pet when I was a teenager, and they're pretty cute. They're quirky little animals. It was sort of like having a hamster and a ferret kind of all rolled in one, I guess. So I thought that was really cute to add to my card. Now I forgot to stamp out my acorn, so I'm going to put 2 critters in my scene, and The hedgehog is going to be my mom, and I'm going to be the little acorn, and we're going to be jumping for joy together in the leaves. So I stamped out my little acorn, and with this stamp set, they have the faces, and there's a few different ones you can choose from. And I think the faces are adorable. I love when stamps have faces. So the first one I colored, I found it was a little too dark and a little too pink. So I went back and redid the second one and did it a little bit lighter, and I was happy with that. So here I'm just laying out my placement of items and how I want the composition to be. I am using watercolor paper for this spot, and I'm going to do some distress ink blending. And I have the little round foam blending tool. And if there's one word of advice I can give when using these inks, it's to go very, very, very lightly. When I first tried these and was doing the trial and error, I tried different papers, different pressures, and it was sort of tricky to get at first, but I found that watercolor paper blends the best and is most forgiving. And then if you go very lightly, when you first damp your little blender onto the ink pad and you bring it over to your paper, that very first swirl that you do, if you just lightly graze the paper and then go from there, you can blend it out really easily. So these three colors are sort of fall, but still fun, and I thought that they tied in well with the leaves, but would be a nice complement and a nice contrast to the elements over the background. And so my darker leaves and darker elements, my darker critters, sort of showed up more and popped off the page. So for these distress inks, I'm using tumbled glass, cracked pistachio, and antique linen. And another little trick I can give you guys too is when you're doing backgrounds, if you're doing a sky background particularly, the sun is always brightest at the horizon line no matter what. So you want your sky to be light at the bottom and gradiate into a darker top. If you've ever seen pictures of night skies, you always notice as you get up higher above the stars, it's always really black and dark. And the same is for the daytime. So here I'm just picking out my background border, and I'm going to use some plaid paper for the frame and as a backing on my card. So I'm using the Perfectly Plaid paper set from Lawn Fawn, and this is from the Spring Summer release. And so because this isn't quite a true fall card, it's sort of blending on the seasons, I wanted to use the brighter colors as well for my border. So I've attached that with my tape roller, and for any overhang, I'm trimming that with my cutting mat and my metal ruler and X-Acto knife. And the reason I do this is because when I do trim it, I can get it right exactly to the edge, and there's no shortage of edging or overhang of edging. It's all flush and perfect. So to put my watercolor scene on my background, I'm going to use foam tape, this 3M foam tape, and just sort of border that with the foam tape and add some pieces in the middle to support the center of the artwork. And I'm just eyeballing that and making sure it's center. One thing I did do with my distress background, which didn't show on camera, is once I had everything blended, I added some water spurts to the paper, some water droplets, and so that's the bokeh effect you see in the background. If you dribble some water onto your watercolor paper when you use the distress inks and let them sit for a minute and then pick them up with paper towel, you get this cool look. And so that's how I got the bokeh effect there. So now I'm just attaching my sentiments to my acrylic block and stamping those out into the background here on the watercolor paper. I've curved the Jump for Joy sentiment. I want that to arch over my little critters and the scene and the leaves. Now because it was watercolor paper, it does have a lot of ridges and bumps, so some of it did not transfer when I put the stamp down. So I just came in with a micron pen, a very fine tip. I have a 005. You could use that, or a 1 would work, an 01 as well. And I just went over the sentiment just to ink the spots that were missed. And then I came in with the smaller sentiment, and it actually inked pretty good. I didn't have to touch that up, so I was pretty happy about that. And for each of the elements in my scene, I'm putting them on foam tape. I want all of those little elements to pop. And so just to get the placement, I find it's easiest if I just tack it to the tip of my X-Acto knife. And then I can pivot the little critters around and the little items until I'm happy with the placement, and then just push them into place with my hand. As a final touch, I'm going to use a Wink of Stella pen in clear This is a brush pen, and so I'm adding it to the cheeks of my critters, and then I'm trimming the edge of the card with that Wink Stella in clear. And I thought that this tied everything together really nicely, and it made a nice sparkly border. It's subtle, but it's pretty. So there you have it. This is my Jump for Joy fall but not fall birthday card. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe so you're notified the next time I post a video. Thanks for watching.